Over the last year, we have travelled to 5 continents in search of modern-day slaves. Men, women and children who are forced to work for no money, held against their will and controlled by violence.
The global economy has created immense wealth in the West, but it's also spawned a sinister new market in slaves. In Africa, Asia and South America, and on our own doorstep in the capitals of Britain and the US.
Especially in this domestic work in England, people are suffering too much. Not only me, there is so many ladies, so many people, others.
A lot of people are deeply shocked that what we're really talking about here is modern-day slavery, I mean, right here in the shadow of the Capitol.
We set out to discover where slavery is flourishing, why it's touching all our lives, and how we can challenge it.
People don't realize that even though it's the year 2000, there's slavery all over the world. And in fact, we are benefiting from this slavery.
Because of economic globalization, more and more Western companies are moving their production to places like India, where labour costs next to nothing, and where even young children are put to work. But we'd come to India not to investigate exploitation or child labour, but to find real slaves, people who are paid nothing, locked away and controlled by violence.
We were heading to an area where thousands of young children have been tricked or kidnapped into slavery, making carpets which end up on sale in Britain. Our guide, Goran Mato, is dedicated to finding and freeing India's child slaves.
We're in northern Bihar, which is the northeast corner of India, Bangladesh to the east, the Himalayas up here, Tibet and Nepal. We're about 300 miles south of Kathmandu. And it's around here that the children are disappearing from. And they're being taken down from Sahasa to Varanasi and the carpet belt around here, where most of the carpets in India are hand-woven. So how many children are actually disappearing from this area?
North Bihar के लगभग 4,000-5,000 बच्चे, लगभग 4,000-5,000 बच्चे गायब हैं जो कालीन उद्योग में काम करते हैं.
And why particularly northern Bihar?
यह गरीब राज्य है, यहाँ स्कूल की अच्छी व्यवस्था नहीं है, इसलिए यहाँ के बच्चे को लालच दे करके ले जाया जा सकता
है. 3 days' drive from Delhi, Goran was taking us to a remote rural village. Without electricity or clean water, the people here live much as their ancestors did thousands of years ago. It's to villages like these, spread across northern India, that the new slave traders come, either with false promises of well-paid work in the city, or simply to kidnap children.
We were here to meet Chiche, just one of the 5,000 fathers in this area whose children have vanished. Chiche last saw his son Huro 5 years ago.
चलने का बाद में हम तो घर पर नहीं था, हम तो परदेश में था. जब हमको पता वहाँ यहाँ से लेटर भेजा ये बच्चा नहीं है, तब वहाँ से हम चले. वहाँ से जब हम चले तो यहाँ घर पाया तो हमको पता नहीं लगा बच्चा को, तो हम पता लगाने लग गया बच्चा को।
How old was Huro when he was taken from you?
6 साल का उम्र था। महसूस तो ऐसे ही हेर रहा था ये देश में, जो कभी उधर कोई ले गया होगा, कहीं नौकरी होगा, कहीं किसी का पास में होगा, ऐसे ही खोज रहा था। नहीं मिलने पर तो वैसे ही दिल लगता है, जैसे कि पागल रूप नहीं होता है, वैसे ही लग रहा है। अब कैसा वैसे ही नहीं लगता है, जो कि बच्चा मिला नहीं तो उस पर तो वैसे ही लगता है सब। उनको वैसे ही लग रहा है जैसे कि पागल रूप नहीं चलता नहीं, वैसे ही जैसे कि पागल का रूप से गांव घूरता और कभी काम करता, कभी कहीं चले जाते।
Have you had any news at all of your son since the kidnapping?
नहीं, बच्चे का हमारे पास खबर है।
Chiche and his family barely survive, scraping together enough food for just one meal a day. There's no way he can afford to leave his family and make the 2-day train journey to the carpet belt where he thinks his son has been taken. The family's only hope of seeing Huro again lies with Goran's organisation, the South Asian Coalition Against Child Servitude, or SACS. Chiche prays that amongst the hundreds of thousands of looms in the carpet belt, the SACS investigators will somehow find news of Huro. Meanwhile, Huro's brothers and sisters are now constantly watched for fear that more children may be stolen into slavery.
दूर नहीं जाने देते, अपना यही घर का नज़दीक खेलते हैं, और बस अपना उस पर एक आदमी को बैटिंग रखते हैं।
We said farewell to Chiche and promised to return as soon as there was news of Huro.
We tend to think of slavery as one of the low points of colonial history, an offence against humanity that we abolished in the 18th century. Few realise that real slavery is secretly flourishing as never before. Today the slaves are well hidden, but as Professor Kevin Bales, an expert in modern-day slavery, explained, the essential elements are unchanged.
Slavery is what slavery has always been. It's about one person completely controlling another person using violence and then exploiting them economically, paying them nothing. That's what slavery is about.
From British-built castles like this on the coast of West Africa, around 13 million people were shipped across the Atlantic during the 400 years of the slave trade. Professor Bales estimates that the growth of the global economy means that at least twice that number are now enslaved around the world.
In the old days, slaves were expensive. You kept them for their whole life. You took care of them. Today, they're cheap. There's a glut of slaves, and when you've used them, you throw them away if you don't want them anymore. They're disposable. They're working on the lower end of the economic ladder. It tends to be raw materials, agriculture, basic stuff that feeds into the local economy. But all over the world, there are also slaves making things that feed into the world economy. Things like cotton, sugar, clothing, even the kind of bangles and rings and glassware and even fireworks that you might end up buying could well have been made by slave labor in the developing world.
In the course of the 20th century, many African nations were forced to make money for their European masters by growing cash crops like cotton, coffee and cocoa. Today, the money still flows north as the profits from cash crops are used to pay interest on international debt. Once these commodities enter the global market, it's almost impossible to trace the true origins of the food and clothing in our shops.
One of the difficulties for consumers is the fact that if we're wearing a cotton shirt, there's a good chance that no slavery went into sewing that shirt. But what about when the cloth for the shirt was actually woven? There's a possibility that slave labor might have been used in the mill. And there's even a greater chance that slavery might have been used in the fields to grow the cotton before it's made into cloth. And that's also very difficult to monitor. I mean, how can we check every single farm where every single bit of cotton comes from before it reaches a mill, before it reaches a factory, before it reaches a retailer, before it reaches us? That's one of the most difficult things about trying to trace out how slave-made goods reach our lives.
Here in the Ivory Coast, the existence of slavery on cotton plantations has been established by UNICEF. But we were travelling in search of slaves in the country's biggest cash crop, cocoa. The Ivory Coast produces nearly half the world's supply, over 100 million tons of cocoa grown on thousands of small plantations. We'd heard rumours that young men were being trafficked from neighbouring Mali to work on these plantations as slaves. Nobody had documented this before, yet the slaves were disturbingly easy to find.
There's nothing to stop these young men leaving the plantation, except that they've been trafficked 300 miles from home, they're penniless, and they have no idea where they are. Paid nothing, unable to leave, and totally controlled by the farmer, these men are not simply exploited, they are modern-day slaves. They agreed to talk to us while their master was away at market.
How long have you been working on this plantation?
Yeah.
And how much money have you been paid for your work?
Mafudi. Min ko son amana tawadi nemo onyedon ko. Amadi ko nte sala amadi ko forse do nte se ka amna la nte woro le nyedo nte ale madi. Woro de la. Nika afoko akadi ale teso. Nika baraka woro na teso ka wori di. Ni dum batui. Ko woro de ko son nte se ka amna la forse la ale batui ko atadi. Abem dina tajula ka gole ko ara abem bonna ala drone bodo note amandini nega barake mbora sugono ko mera wari nega barake war masoro abena borom na ala drone bodo.
And do you find the work on the plantation easy or hard?
Akajugu ke mo bese ka fo bara man ka manyu ko akajugu atigeni e mo mi ta kare ite se ka ka manyu anu muru mala anu bese ka ronga akajugu mo ngira akajugu.
Sigia si mi anga amboya kana wari ko ta fanfela lo konta mun tisia
ka kola on kera joye ka kola nute o maka huyi ka on te huyi de ka kola jo.
Once the cocoa pods have been harvested, the beans are scooped out and dried before being packed for sale. Although cocoa is grown in dozens of countries around the world, the Ivory Coast is by far the biggest producer. Last year, the UK directly imported over £50 million worth of Ivoirian cocoa to satisfy our appetite as some of the biggest chocolate eaters in the world. The average person in Britain munches through the equivalent of over 200 bars of chocolate a year.
Since many of the plantation workers are from Mali, we wanted to talk to Abdul Mako, one of the Malinese consuls in the Ivory Coast. He invited us to his home to meet 19 young men who had recently been freed from slavery on a cocoa plantation.
Bon. Voici les enfants dont on vous a parlé. Ils sont au nombre de 19. On vient de les libérer avec l'appui des autorités ivoiriennes. Là, ces jeunes vivaient un véritable esclavage. Ils travaillaient à l'aube très tôt le matin et ils le finissaient après le crépuscule. Aujourd'hui, ils font bon mine parce qu'ils ont demandé à ce qu'ils soient coiffés, sinon ils faisaient beaucoup plus pitié.
Et pourquoi est-il malade?
En fait, il est malade parce que, et lui, en fait, il vient d'arriver. Il n'a que 6 mois. Donc, il était à une période de dressage, en fait. Malheureusement pour lui, son corps ne peut pas supporter les coups.
After one of the young men finally managed to escape, the consul led a raid on the plantation to liberate those still enslaved.
Le tout s'était pratiquement isolé du monde entier. Et il était méconnaissable quand on nous a trouvés. Le tout s'est passé comme s'il sortait d'un autre monde. À partir de 20h, 20h30, la cabane est bouclée par un d'entre eux qui est considéré comme le chef. Et chacun rentre dans la cabane avec une vieille boîte de nid d'eau dans laquelle il doit uriner. Il n'est pas question de sortir la nuit pour uriner. Quand ils fuient, ils doivent obligatoirement être rattrapés par leurs camarades. Quand il est rattrapé, il est battu matin et soir pendant les premiers jours. Et quand il n'en peut plus, on le laisse, car lorsque ses plaies sont cicatrisées, on le remet dans le lot pour recommencer le travail. Et on le surveille, on veille sur lui, jusqu'à ce qu'il se ramollisse, qu'il accepte son sort et ses conditions.
The consul has arranged for the boys to go home to Mali, to be reunited with families that may have given up hope of ever seeing them again. For now, they are staying at Consul Mako's home, beginning to recover from years of psychological as well as physical torture.
Anda cheni ale kanta anda kume furun nang ko bara de me ba jonya la furula ba tu takana atesonga wadu fe bon abata mo ko takana groupe nyonga patora ma ofasa ko ni don na boli bon na le tigi sorla abena faka serenya fana ba do na ande se ka bori ni fana borla taka yoro ti fe e ba taka fam va abena mine ni fana na mine abena ibugo nyinema abe sereki ibugo sisa ka datu gidalai kumina ka bulu sirti ka soro doba bugo ya doba bugo la kofe lu ba fa ka bugo bita dirgo bugo ka proof la sika kote ka bugo ni ma.
And how long would they be for?
Ama bugo chien fla wula fe ani sokoma
ka bugo chogo juman la ba yi.
How old is this boy?
He's 18 now.
18 now. Your body is covered in scars. Can you tell us what happened to you?
We anta kana bla barla bo barana na gan na enforce sa barake mbura sisa bombura mge utala mine kana mbo sisa abola mge bana ni bara digla nyongona atesela atesega tamatuguni allala tiga soro shefu tala ka tanta kana ni far tiga afarba tiga ka jur bobola ni abe bara ka jur ni mina ka don dumugo ba dumuka ka don na ba tur ka fen dudu abena ba ka tu bara lai.
In the time that you were working on the plantation, was anybody killed like this?
Ka boka fa be bana ni do bola na amadimna ka ke atesega fuike abata ka tagana ka tabla abla ka ta fanga kwale talabla
Tatala bara.
ma ba foti kwale talabla tayi.
Was anybody here paid any money for their work? And how many years were you working for? When you think back on what you've had to do for these last 5 years, what does it make you feel? The cocoa goes into making chocolate. Have you ever tasted chocolate? In the rest of the world, millions and millions of people eat chocolate. What would you tell those people?
Consul Mako told us how to find the farmer who had enslaved these men. More than 3 hours from the nearest road, his plantation is typical of the tens of thousands in the Ivory Coast, remote and inaccessible.
It's breaking up, which is good.
We set off in search of a slave master.
So this is it. This is where the farmer kept the 19 children. The cocoa plantation of an Ivory Coast slave master. 3 days' walk from the nearest police station, the farmer here feels he is beyond the reach of the law. But Yo Jorman welcomed us to his 500-acre plantation and was remarkably frank about how he and other farmers get their slaves.
We be koroma we stan wabambe we wabambe siomo wabam be kawe makwa.
The young men we've met who worked here said you used to beat them, and we've seen their scars.
Ke pele china bele bege be kwele bena ke wonjang wole jo mi jo ni jo lan le be kmor kwele wol wara pine. Belewa kuma le ma pie fal pie lewa mona ko seli pani belewa vamele ni donc bele siba seli pa falo ma pele ka gbana bara mo belebe falo ya chen ko ma pele pele donc kena be jowi bara ye ni songwa bara me pele bara le o fansi ka tare abese kuma mi tina na bam da pie donc wole ba lo lungo liban kan apele tima le be ye mon piame.
miles from any other settlements, the lock on the door of the dormitory where the boys used to sleep seemed incongruous. The few possessions that the boys had left behind in the rush of their liberation had recently been dumped.
Were the workers free to leave whenever they wanted to?
Oui. Be manasi be ine tay. Mais bele be selim pa pele wajo be corona gbene foyona. Uyema uba fele. Donc walo le monde ba we ba mo ba perdu win.
With almost half the world's cocoa coming from the Ivory Coast, we wanted to know what proportion of that cocoa is tainted with slavery and violence. Diaby Dembele has been working in and around the cocoa plantations for nearly 20 years.
Partout tu trouves que les enfants ils sont pendant 10, tu vas trouver que les planteurs ils frappent.
Quel est le plus âgé esclave que vous avez trouvé?
Le plus âgé, ça commence à 20 ans, si c'est trop à 25 ans. Chaque matin, il y a un plaignant qui vient disant que j'ai travaillé dans telle plantation, je n'ai pas payé, et j'étais frappé avec les, comment on appelle, les planteurs. Chaque matin, on a ce jugement en notre amical. En ce cas, souvent, on se rencontre à ce problème-là, parce que souvent, on se rencontre, on convoque les planteurs. Pourquoi tu peux utiliser les petites, n'a pas pu payer? Il dit mon produit est impayé, bas prix. Bon, on n'a pas trouvé bon prix cette année, c'est pour cela, en homme mon compte que je n'ai pas pu payer les enfants.
À votre avis, quel est le pourcentage de plantations en Côte d'Ivoire où il y a des esclaves?
Moi, mon expérience en tant que 17 ans, chef d'amicale, si on étude sur 100% plantation ivoirienne, il faut minimum, faut compter 90% plantation ivoirienne que ça existe, cet esclavage.
Slavery on at least 90% of plantations. That means 2/5 of the world's cocoa is tainted with slavery. And as more and more farmers can't afford to pay their workers, slavery will spread.
The world price of cocoa has been steadily falling for the last 15 years. Yet as the price farmers get for what they grow has gone down, the price we pay for chocolate has gone up. Until last year, the price farmers got for their cocoa was guaranteed by the government. But the World Bank felt farmers were being cheated and believed they'd do better dealing directly with the cocoa buyers. So the World Bank made the government scrap the price guarantee system for the Ivory Coast to qualify for partial debt relief. Since then, the cocoa price has plummeted, reaching a record low this February. Farmers now get less than ever before for their cocoa.
One of the ways they can deal with the squeeze that puts on them, the pressure that puts on them, is to pay even less for the labor they use in the fields, in the plantations, or if they're unscrupulous, to enslave that labor. And the situation of structural adjustment has, in a sense, put the pressure on the farmers to use slave labor to produce cocoa.
Washington, D.C. is the home of the World Bank. Set up over 50 years ago with the specific aim of reducing global poverty, the bank tries to attract the best economic brains in the world to manage the global economy. As an added incentive to relocate to the US, the bank will arrange visas for their employees to bring in domestic help. But it's what happens to those domestics once here that is the concern of Joy Zaremka.
We have all sorts of cases. We've had women tell us that, they have not been called by their names. Instead, they're referred to as the slave or the creature. Or there was a Filipino woman who was required to wear a dog collar and even sleep outside on occasions. You hear of a situation where this one woman was forced to kiss her employee's feet. I mean, this is happening today, and these are the sort of things that, you know, are happening right here on American soil. And I mean, for a lot of Americans, that's almost unfathomable.
To coincide with the World Bank's spring meetings, Joy is organising a protest team to highlight the plight of domestic workers and join the main demonstration against the bank. Her latest client, Dora, was brought over to work for an employee of the World Bank last year. But once in the US, Dora was made to work 7 days a week and forbidden to leave the house. After her requests to be paid what she was owed were repeatedly ignored, Dora finally escaped from her employer by jumping from his moving car.
I can't go out, so I have to remain in the house. I cannot use the phone in the house. They saw me writing letters. They said I should stop writing letters. And if I stop writing letters, they can let me stay with them for 1 year. So I should stop writing letters. I should stop communicating with people outside. They gave me a room in the basement, not furnished. They only put iron bed with the small student mattress on it for me. And that was all in that room, the bed I slept on.
The house where Dora was imprisoned is in a prosperous suburb just half an hour from central Washington. We contacted her former employers and asked to speak to them. When they didn't respond, we called in person, but their eldest son was sent to answer the door.
Hiya. Is your mum in?
Yeah, she's here.
We're from British Television. We've been talking to Dora, and Dora suggested we go and talk to your mum.
We're gonna, we're about to leave.
Oh, we wouldn't be very long. We'll be very quick. It's just that Dora's been talking about working here, and we'd like to give your mum the opportunity to tell her side of the story.
No, thank you.
So she doesn't want to talk to us?
Once Dora had escaped, she turned to the World Bank for help.
We recognize that there is a problem if a person comes over in domestic worker capacity for somebody that we have a relationship as employer-employee with. I think it's important as an overview to bear in mind that the World Bank's mission is the alleviation of poverty. So if you look at our mission, it would be totally inconsistent for us to retain employees who are abusive to domestic workers. As far as what's going on in this individual case, we are dealing with it. We've made some changes in our rules. If we have to take more, we're certainly going to do that.
I think Dora's case exhibits all that is wrong with the way in which the World Bank is attempting to ameliorate the situation. The domestic worker is the one who's sort of put on trial, who's interrogated, who's seen as the actual perpetrator of the problem, rather than the victim of this abuse.
As part of their investigation, World Bank employees have visited Dora's mother in Ghana 3 times. According to Dora's family, an attempt to hush up the scandal and get Dora to come home. Necessary fact-finding trips, according to the World Bank.
In my mother's letter, she wrote, World Bank in Ghana and Washington, D.C. are harassing me in Ghana here. Dora, this World Bank thought you are one of the girls to carry away to America to put into slavery.
Do you feel the World Bank is in some way responsible?
Yes, because their employer brought me, and that visa is sponsored by them.
Because women like Dora are forbidden to leave the house, many cases are never detected. Even Joy didn't realize she was living next door to a slave.
For about 4 years, I've recently found out that I too was living next to a slave. 2 houses down from where I lived, there was a young girl who was sort of being kept in this home. And we found out that this woman had not ever been paid for all that she did. I mean, this is somebody living right down the road, and I didn't know, And I think that's what makes this this problem so I mean, it's so underexposed right now. There is so little awareness. Americans don't want to believe that modern-day slavery is occurring.
Joy arranged for us to meet the woman who had been her neighbour, together with 2 other recently liberated girls. All 3 were tricked into coming here with false promises. Forced to work for no money, psychologically terrorised and controlled by violence, they were domestic slaves in the heart of the USA.
She made a promise. While I'm helping her, she's gonna send me to school. So I came here, I was helping her, lived with her for so long, but she didn't do it. She didn't send me to school. They just told me that I have to stay with them for some years before going to school, but they didn't tell me that before coming here. I get up around like 6 o'clock, sometimes 6:30. I go back to bed like around 2:30. I was helping her, taking care of the kids, doing everything in the house. I wasn't getting paid and stuff. So I lived in the house for about 3.5 to 4 years. They didn't allow me to go anywhere. I didn't have friends. I was only in the house throughout. They go to work, they come and meet me in the house. They leave me in the house, they come and meet me in the house throughout like that. I wasn't allowed to use the phone. And I can't write. If I write, they'll open it and look what's inside. She used to like scare me that out there they kill people and stuff, they rape little girls. She always scared me with words like that, so that I couldn't go anywhere. Even I'm planning to run, I cannot because of all what she's saying. They used to hit me. I can't go for 3 days without them beating me up. I was just praying that, please, God, if you know I'm not going to stay, I'm going to be in this house without going to school, just leave me out of this house like this. She calls me, she says, you motherfucker. You're so dumb, you're stupid, asshole.
And how old were you when you came over?
Yeah, I was 15, turning 16. 14.
Because these women are so emotionally abused and don't believe that they have a right to a better life, this form of slavery often remains hidden.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Joy believes that as awareness of this problem grows, more and more cases will come to light.
It is something that's far more widespread than we know or are willing to admit. And what we're finding is that some of the abusers are Americans. We have a case in New York with the UN. We have a lot of cases with embassies as well. Geneva, we hear that there's things going on in France, in England. I mean, it's not just something that's happening here. We are aware that it is actually a much larger worldwide problem.
Dora, Christina, Rosalind and Judith were able to escape and can begin to rebuild a life. It's impossible to tell how many other domestic slaves are hidden away in the suburbs of Washington and other cities around the world.
For us, it was time to leave the slaves of Washington and return to India, where there was news of a breakthrough in the search for Chiche's missing son Huro, enslaved in one of India's carpet looms. Sachs, the organisation that had been searching for the missing boy Huro, believed he was somewhere in the Indian Carpet Belt, a huge area centred around the city of Varanasi, 400 miles east of Delhi. The big business here is hand-woven carpets. £16 million worth of carpets come to the UK from India every year.
Where do most of your carpets go to? Which country do most of your carpets
Well,
go
mostly
to?
London and America.
London and America.
Sachs introduced us to a liberated carpet slave, Bashu, who described the kind of life Huro was probably leading.
In morning 5 o'clock I wake up, then start to work. Then at night 12 o'clock, where I start to work.
Can you show me with your hands how you would do the work?
Yeah, we do like that. Then you have one, maybe what? Then we do like that.
And where would your hands be injured?
Here, do you know here a cord to loam is so tight. Then we do like that. Then this fingers move. Then here cut. Okay. So and here is so cut.
Like like glass.
Yeah, like glass.
Yeah. What was your master like towards all the other children?
He have one stick, so big.
Stick.
Yeah. Then they're not we're not work. Then he be you are not working. Then okay, and then child is afraid. Then okay, I'm working. Just don't beat me.
Scattered across the countryside around Varanasi are hundreds of thousands of carpet looms, some of which are worked by child slaves. The looms are built inside normal village houses. From the outside, it's often hard to tell there's a loom within. The entire multi-million-pound export business operates out of small village buildings. No sweatshops, no factories.
Although it's illegal for children under 14 to work, it's generally accepted that children do work as soon as they can earn a living. But slavery is condemned at all levels of Indian society. To try to find Huro, the Sachs investigators mingled with the villagers to pick up the names and origins of children at work in the looms. They heard that there were 3 boys from Chiche's village in Bihar working for a loom owner called Munim Gupta.
Posing as buyers for a UK retail chain, we invited Gupta to our hotel room where we'd prepared a secret camera. He never appeared, but his 2 representatives did.
Hiya. In England, we do not like to encourage the working of children.
वो बच्चे एकदम
वो इंग्लैंड में
नहीं, जो इस समय तो इंडिया से धीरे-धीरे खत्म हो रही है। यहाँ तो इंडिया से एकदम खत्म हो चुका है, बच्चे वाला कार्य जो है खत्म हो चुका है। अब सभी माने कि ग्रेजुएट आदमी काम करते हैं, इसे 20-25 की उम्र के बाद वाले काम करते हैं, और सभी पढ़े लिखे लोग, सब अच्छे घराने के बच्चे आप तो अगर देखे हैं।
होल्डर ऐसा है, लूम होल्डर ऐसा है हम लोग कि जो है उसमें बाहरी आदमी नहीं, सब गाँव के हैं, सब परिवार के।
और बच्चे तो कतई नहीं,
ये नहीं कि बिहार से हम लोग ले आए हैं उसको करवाते हैं काम।
नहीं, बच्चे नहीं।
He is saying no, none of the loom.
So, in your village, on your looms, the families you mentioned, like the Gupta families, never before have they used child labor.
बाकी जो आप माना गुप्ता ये
हाँ कौन है ना हाँ लोग नहीं, कभी बच्चे का इस्तेमाल कभी नहीं हुआ यहाँ, हमारे यहाँ कभी बच्चे का इस्तेमाल हुआ ही नहीं। गांव में पूरे अगल-बगल 4-6-10 विलेज में कभी नहीं ऐसा हुआ। हमारे यहाँ जो क्वालिटी बनती है ना।
Despite these denials, Sachs asked the fathers of the 3 slaves to come down from Bihar to the carpet region. We were asked to lie low in the hotel until they arrived, but things didn't work out the way we hoped.
We don't want to cause any suspicion, and obviously the middlemen network is very strong, just from what you say about the parents being beaten up before they even got on the train. Surely that would frighten them so much that it would possibly prevent them from coming. Yeah.
Two days later, despite the intimidation, Chiche and one other father, Manoj, managed to catch the train to Varanasi, determined to find their sons. That night, under cover of darkness, we talked to them at the safe house where they were staying until the warrant for the raid could be organised.
इसी तरह से हम सोचते हैं जी भगवान को दुआ मनाते हैं कि हमको बचा जिसकी छूट जाना चाहिए, बस और क्या करें।
अच्छा, आपको बच्चे को देखो तो 5 साल हो गया।
हाँ जी।
कैसे पहचानी है कि आपका है वही लड़का?
हम चिन्ह जाएंगे जी, उसका हाथ का थोड़ा सा ये जो है ना, और कदम का गाछ पैर नहीं होता है, वहाँ से गिरे हैं ना बाबूजी, वो थोड़ा सा ये जो हमरे वो देखेगा नज़र से तो पहले वो कानने शुरू कर देगा और रुकेगा नहीं। वो तो मिलना ही है बाबूजी, जब दुआ अपने सबका होगा तो मिलना ही है।
बच्चा पर जो ख्याल होता है ना, बहुत रोता है। मूर्ख आदमी यही सुध जता है वही बताते हैं।
4 days later, the district magistrate finally gave the go-ahead for the raid. We were given a jeep with tinted glass and told to keep hidden until the raid was well underway.
The loom owners are sometimes armed, so even with the police on their side, the Sachs activists are keen to get the raid over with as fast as possible to avoid a fight.
यार हम लोग घर से आए हैं तुम्हारे, सुनो बेटा, बड़े बच्चे
The children live in terror of the loom owner. It's been drilled into them that they must hide if strangers ever come to the loom.
नहीं कपड़े पहन रहा, ऊपर देखना पड़ेगा। चल जाओ एकदम ऊपर चल जाओ। सर इसमें नहीं है कुछ, पीछे देखो। क्या नहीं निकल रहा है? ऊपर निकालो। इसमें घुसे हो, खींचिए। अरे ये उसी लड़की है। आ जा रहे जी, चलो। कोई भागना मत। सदा देखना मुसारे यहाँ ही रहे। हटो प्रधान दिया जाओ। इंस्पेक्टर साहब बात कर लेंगे। जाओ प्रधान दिया। बोलो तुम इसे मुनि अंदर है मुनि गुप्ता पकड़ी हो बहुत सारे।
Chiche's quest to find his son is finally over. After 5 years as a carpet slave, unpaid, unable to leave and controlled by violence, Huro is free.
चलो तुम खाना होती है बाहर ही, मैं भी चले।
Along with Horo, 18 other child slaves were found. But the loom owner, Munim Gupta, escaped.
क्या नाम है?
Huro.
This boy is Huro, the boy whose father has come from Bihar. All these boys were found along with him.
हमारे लड़के देखा तो ये कहता कि जे बाबू आई फिर रोने लग गया। रोने के बाद में हमको कुबर तो नहीं रहा था, आंसू से हमको गिर गया।
जी के देख के खत रोने लगा।
क्यों? ठीक नहीं दिखता ये सब, मतलब इस सब को ऊंचा हो गया। जैसे
गलीचा बिन रहता और जाल कहते तो नहीं जाल देते हैं। सुबह उठ कर सुबह तुरंत बैठाए थे पट्टी पर।
कितने बजे उठते थे? कितना सुबह?
5 बजे सुबह।
5 बजे?
फिर वहाँ से फिर 12 बजे रात का 2-3 घंटा सोया था।
ऐसा मिला कभी?
नहीं,
बिल्कुल नहीं।
नहीं।
Sadly, the raid brought bitter disappointment for Manoj, whose son was not one of the 18 set free. But Horo's cousin Shivji was amongst those liberated.
सोते कहाँ थे?
वो है कारखाने।
उसी के अंदर? कारखाने के अंदर ही? जहाँ काम करते थे?
हाँ।
कभी सोचा नहीं घर चले जाए?
हाँ।
फिर कोशिश करी?
कोशिश करी रात के ताला मार दे बहारे से।
Most of the carpets made by child slaves like Horo and Shivji are destined for the showrooms of Europe and the USA. And while we continue to buy carpets that may have been made by child slaves, the slavery will continue. But boycotting Indian carpets will just make the poor poorer. The only effective way to eradicate child slavery is for everyone to buy only carpets which we know for certain are free of slave labour. Carpets like these, which carry the label of the UNICEF-backed organisation, Rugmark. Each Rugmark carpet has a unique number like a barcode to make sure that no slavery is involved in its manufacture.
B&Q is one of the very few UK retailers which actively supports the Rugmark labelling system.
A customer buys this rug to improve their quality of life and improve their environment. They put this rug on their lounge floor and it looks great. We sell this rug to make profits, to pay my salary and give our shareholders a good return on their investment. And we're doing that to improve our quality of life. So we feel it's obscene to do that at the expense of somebody else's quality of life, especially a 10-year-old slave in India strapped to this loom making this rug 20 hours a day. And it's something not just B&Q should get behind, but all businesses and all customers.
Rugmark has 12 inspectors in the carpet belt around Varanasi. Working in pairs, they check over 500 looms every week. The carpet looms are randomly selected and the inspectors are given the list of looms to be monitored on a daily basis. These random checks can then be linked back to the code number on every Rugmark carpet, so the carpet buyer can be as certain as possible that their carpet is free of slave labour. If a child is discovered in one of these raids, the loom owner immediately loses the Rugmark accreditation and the child is taken to one of the organisation's rehabilitation centres. Both the rehab centres and the loom inspection process is paid for by a small surcharge on the price of each carpet sold.
Well, this rug is about £65 and the Rugmark label costs no more than £1. And we believe that's a small price to pay for that peace of mind that by buying that rug you're not getting involved in the child slavery problem.
All of these children are ex-slaves rescued from the carpet belt. Sachs estimate that as many as 9 out of 10 carpets that don't carry the rug mark may have been touched by the small hands of slavery. With so many child slaves involved, it's perhaps surprising that so few UK retailers support the rug mark scheme.
Why is it when I go to big department stores, aren't all the rugs carrying a rug mark label? You know, why aren't all the consumers saying, you know, we want to only buy rugs with a rug mark label? Because it's a very simple thing to do, to be able to say, I'm only going to buy a good if you can show me that it's not made by slaves.
Huro and Shivji have been back in their village for a month. Both are having nightmares that they are still carpet slaves, but can at least now talk about how their ordeal began.
नहर पर गेल दिन बेदरे तम नहर पर गेल रे जरना बिछा मुनि गुप्ता के चले बच्चा मिठाई दल का कहे चल सौर बाजार गेलिए तो कहे के गाड़ी पे बस पे चढ़ा दल का कहले ई कथा कहे और कुछ दूर में तो नना चल जात रहले बनारस.
So, what was it he made you do?
गलीचा बिनबे रे कल गांव में यार नहीं दे रहे आवेला वही में बंद करके रखने रे गलीचे में बंद करके रखने रे लेटरिंग ऑन करे जाए तेरे बंद करने रे मारे पीटे रे वक्री डर लागे रे कुछ नहीं डर और गलीचा बिने रे तक डर मारे रे कुछ होबे रे त मारता था और गाली देता और गलीचा बुलवाने लगा. अंदर से निकले न दे रहे वह में काम करवे रहे खिबे रहे वह में ऊपर में पैसा व्यार करवे जा रहे लाट जा रहे झरा फिरवे लाट आवे रहे.
Huro was there with you. Was he somebody you could talk to or have as a friend?
न दूसर रूम में रह रहे हम दूसर रूम में नहीं बात कर रहे थे.
And how do you feel now to be free?
बढ़िया लग रहा बढ़िया लग रहा.
After so many years of beatings, hunger and torture, Huro and Shivji need help to recover, so they'll soon head to the Sachs Ashram in Delhi, a rehabilitation centre for freed child slaves.
We promised we would see the boys there, but for now we needed to head for London to meet a woman who had been brought to England's capital and forced to work as a slave. No one knows how many slaves are hidden away in the UK. But behind closed doors, diplomats, VIPs and other outwardly respectable people keep domestic workers in conditions of slavery, unable to leave, paid nothing and living with violence.
Reshma was a slave. She is still so frightened of her former employer, a member of the royal family of one of the Gulf states, that she asked for her face to be hidden.
Can you describe how you were treated here in England?
वो इंसान को इंसान ही नहीं समझते, एकदम से समझते हैं कि वो गुलाम है ये हमारा और हम जब चाहें जैसे चाहें उससे काम ले सकते हैं. तो अपना नींद भी नहीं थी, जब चाहे वो उठा सकते थे रात में दिन में कभी भी. तो खाने के लिए वक्त नहीं था, और नहाने के लिए तक वक्त नहीं था, तो सोने के लिए भी थोड़े से आवर्स थे, 2-3 आवर्स इस तरह के. Sometimes they will pull my ear. Sometimes if you talk, they will tell, if you give reply, I'll cut your tongue. They will shout. They won't think this. रोना भी आता था रात में सोच के, ये इस तरह का बैड सलूक करते हैं मेरे साथ. तो क्या कर सकते हैं हम, ना कुछ बोल सकते हैं ना कुछ कर सकते हैं. काम कर रही हूँ.
One night, when Reshma was up getting milk for the child in her care, her employer turned on her.
Catch my arm and take me like this and push me out.
And pushed you out of the front
Yes.
door?
And locked door.
Did you try it to see if it was locked? Could you
Yes,
get back
yes.
in?
But it was locked. मैं वहाँ इंतज़ार करती रही खड़े रह के 3:30-4 बजे तक, मगर किसी ने.
The family left the country and Reshma has never heard from them since.
No, they didn't pay any money. They threw me out. So I'm in empty hand, just in one dress.
Before this interview today, you were very afraid to speak to us. What made you decide that you would speak to us?
Especially in this domestic work in England, people are suffering too much. Not only me, there is so many ladies, so many people, others. I want somebody have to be help for these people.
Across London from the diplomatic quarter, the world price of cocoa is set. By the time it's being traded here and on a similar exchange in New York, cocoa has become a valuable commodity. The way the new global economy works therefore has a direct, if unintentional, impact on the lives of slaves on the West African cocoa plantations. As the price goes down, the slavery goes up.
Danny Swales, a trader on the futures floor, explained how much is gambled every day on minor price changes.
On an average day at the moment, we're looking at around 6,000 to 7,000 lots. £6,000 per lot, and times the 6,000 lots, you're looking at about £36 million.
That's £1 billion a month. Yet few of the deals down here actually involve real cocoa being delivered. For the most part, traders buy and sell the promise to deliver cocoa sometime in the future. Buying this morning, selling for profit this afternoon. This trade helps producers and buyers gauge the future price of cocoa. But it also attracts high-risk speculators.
Speculators can affect a small market like these in quite a substantial way. If somebody were to be holding a significant amount of the spot cocoa, then there would be a squeeze on the market and the near-month price would rally above and beyond all the other prices on the board.
A trader on the London futures market tried exactly this gamble 4 years ago. He bought up huge quantities of cocoa to force the price up, then later had to dispose of the stockpile. Many experts feel it was the combination of this supply of cheap cocoa and nerves over the World Bank enforced liberalisation in the Ivory Coast that have led to this year's all-time lows.
The cocoa produced by slaves joins the great river of cocoa which flows to Europe, so none of the bulk cocoa importers can be certain that their supply is free from slave labour. Some of the cocoa is bought by big chocolate manufacturers, but most is bought by giant food multinationals to be processed into chocolate flavourings and coatings for biscuits, cakes, breakfast cereals and ice cream. Since liberalisation, the number of companies buying cocoa has dropped from over 70 to around a dozen, concentrating the buying power into just a few very powerful hands. The industry told us that it was shocked and disturbed by our allegation of slavery in West Africa, and if it proved to be true, they would be most concerned. But after just a few months of investigation, we established that 90% of cocoa plantations on the Ivory Coast use some slave labour.
Chocolate is one of those products that potentially has slave labor behind it. You know, we know that there is slavery in the cocoa plantations in West Africa. Now, when you've got slavery in any kind of product, it means that even the products that are made with free labor, with paid labor, have to compete against slave-made products. That brings the price down. that means that chocolate bar cost you a little less. Or sometimes it means the company that sold it to you made a little more profit.
All this is a world away from the realities of life on a cocoa plantation. Slaves here cost around £15. But to find out just how easy it would be to buy one, we asked Honoré, the local journalist we were working with, to take a secret camera to the marketplace and try to buy some workers for his farm.
For 15,000, so it's normally 15,000 CFA, so £15.
Now he took this money and
pushed it up.
Yes, he pushed it up, and
he thinks he can get more money out of you because you look more affluent.
Yes.
Because you got a bargain with him.
40 hands.
Yes.
That's 50,000.
Yes, for two.
For two boys.
Yes,
yeah.
2 boys.
Within just half an hour, Honoré found what he was looking for. A trafficker willing to sell him 2 young men newly arrived from Mali and looking for work.
Il faut quand même qu'ils nous disent combien ça fait et tout ça. Moi, je vais aller prendre l'argent. Voilà. Alors, ce matin, on ne te prend.
Once the price had been agreed, Honoré was taken to a farm just outside town where the 2 young men he had agreed to buy were being kept in a shed.
C'est les deux.
Later that day, we met the 2 men, Umaru and Abu Bakr, at Honoré's plantation and told them what we had learnt of slavery on the Ivory Coast.
We've spoken to men who've not only not been paid for years, but have been whipped and have been not allowed to leave.
If they knew
They'd
this,
heard these stories,
yeah.
why did they come?
Parce que mɔgɔ bɛɛ tɛ kelen ye quoi. Même n'a a bɛ kɛla, a bɛ sɔrɔ mɔgɔ ɲɛnama dɔ bɛna sɔrɔ peut-être ne kɔni nana o de kama. Chance la. Voilà, chance la.
Having narrowly escaped slavery, these men can now have the paid work they were so desperate to find when they left home.
For the 19 young men rescued by Consul Mako, the nightmare of slavery is over. They're returning to Mali with tales that may convince some of the thousands of young men who flood across the border every year not to take the risk.
People watching this may think, well, why don't we just stop buying chocolate? But I have to tell you, that can actually make things worse. You know, if we all stop buying chocolate, the price of cocoa on the world market would fall dramatically. The farmers would start getting a lot less for the cocoa they grow. They've got cocoa farms. They can't switch suddenly over to making TV sets. They have to grow cocoa. No, the right way to go about this is, in fact, to get behind those organizations, like the Fair Trade Organization, that makes sure that we pay the right kind of price for the products and that the producer gets the right kind of profit for it. We have to make it clear to the multinationals that slavery is too high a price to pay for cheap goods.
The dramatic shifts of the global economy have made more and more of the world's poor vulnerable to being enslaved. But it is still possible to eradicate slavery by all of us forcing not only the multinationals, but also governments to act. Here in Brazil, 30,000 men, women and children were enslaved in camps in the depths of the rainforest, producing charcoal for the steel industry. But when images like these were seen in the North American press, the government came under intense pressure to act against the slaveholders. A task force was set up, and in just 3 years, slavery in the charcoal fields was abolished. They may still be badly exploited, but these men are free to leave, they are not controlled by violence, and they are paid.
A gente trabalha mesmo porque se a gente não trabalhar, a opção é, né? É o jeito, né? Mas não recompensa não. A poeira, né? Plaquinha aí, ó. E aqui acaba a gente. A gente sente, quando a gente tá bem descansado, a gente sente. Quando a gente respira, a gente sente o pulmão da gente. Quando a gente cospe mesmo, que a gente sai dentro do forno, quando a gente cospe assim é pretinho. A poeira, placa dele.
And how much do you earn in a day?
R$7.
7 reais.
É duro.
It's hard, but it's no longer slavery. The experience of the charcoal camps of Brazil proves that when there is a will, modern slavery can be abolished.
But liberation is not the end of the story for slaves. After years of brutality and psychological torture, they need help to adapt to lives of freedom and choice. At the Sachs Rehabilitation Centre in Delhi, called the Mukti Ashram, Huro and Shivji are getting exactly that help, along with 50 or so other children, all of whom have been rescued from slavery. Here, the children learn to like themselves again. They learn to mix with other children, and they learn to play. Suman runs the ashram and is the much-loved auntie amongst the children.
When these children come in the center, they are just left free. They can sleep for as many hours they like. They can play, they can dance, they can sing songs, or they can sit, they can relax. And in the meantime, our staff try to build some sort of rapport with them. And by doing this, the children here, he is not the only one who has been suffered. There are children working in different industries and facing the same similar sort of problem. So that gives them some sort of confidence.
बहुत से बच्चे जो थे वो गलीचा बनाते थे तो कौन कौन बनाते थे गलीचा ये देखो किसी ने बैठा नहीं बैठा नहीं बैठा आज तक
So then we ask them what you want to now do. Then they come out that they want to learn something. They want, since they are illiterate, so they want to get some education. And gradually we make the timetable according to wishes of the children.
Suman's organisation rescues around 3,000 children a year from slavery in brick kilns, stone quarries, glass and fireworks factories and carpet looms. But Suman has yet to see a single slave master imprisoned for his crimes.
So the loom owner who kept Huro for 5 years,
nothing has happened to him.
He walks free in India.
He walks free, yeah. Generally it happens. Generally it happens. No, we never came across where an employer has been punished.
For Huro and Shivji, the time has come to leave Delhi and head back to their home village. At Suman's ashram, they have learned they are not worthless.
इसी तरह से पहले मुक्ति आश्रम में आया तो मेरे को डर लगता था, मन नहीं लगता था। अब मैं सबसे बोल लेता हूँ और पढ़ाई करता है 2 सर के साथ में और बाप के नाम सीख गया, अपन नाम सीख गया, हस्तरिक पहाड़ा और जोरघट। पढ़ल नहीं रहेगा तो कोई ठग लेगा, पढ़ल है तो कोई किसी को नहीं ठगने देगा। नहीं करना चाहे, पढ़ल रहेगा तो अपना पैरों पर खड़ा हो सकता है, काम करेगा तो मुरुक रहेगा, कोई ठग लेगा, अपना पैरों पर खड़ा नहीं हो सकता।
Huro and Shivji are free, but Sachs estimate that in India's carpet looms alone, as many as 300,000 children remain enslaved.
से गुलामी नहीं करना और छोटे और गली चार में कर रहा गुलामी उसको छोड़ा को पढ़ाई देना चाहिए.
We can only guess the real damage done to these children. In the heart of the world's largest democracy, they were enslaved and tortured for more than half their short lives, so that a few dozen carpets could be sold in the West for a few pounds less.
Every one of us is benefiting from slavery around the world. We could eradicate slavery. The laws are in place. The multinationals, the World Trade Organization, the United Nations, they could end slavery. But they're not going to do it until and unless we demand that they do.
Slavery is illegal in every country in the world. Yet because of the global market and our demand for ever cheaper goods, there are more slaves on Earth today than ever before in human history. Yet that same global market gives every one of us the power of the consumer. If we choose to, we can use that power to end slavery.